Howdy, I'm Brian Foley. I'm a criminal defense attorney here in Conroe, Texas, and I help people who are charged with crimes in Houston, Conroe, and the surrounding counties. Today we're going to be starting a new video series called The Dirty Little Secret, where I go over different crimes, a little bit about the crime, and then I kind of tell you the inside knowledge, the thing that all us lawyers know that maybe you don't. And I call that the dirty little secret. So the first crime we're going to go over today is DWI refusal, or DWI no test. This would be a case where someone's been arrested for their first time DWI, and the officer, as they do in every case, they read a form called the DIC-24, and then they request a breath or blood specimen. And if there is no test, that means that the client has refused to give a breath or a blood specimen. Well, the first thing that might happen is the officer may seek a blood warrant. This is something that they will do frequently. In Montgomery County, there is something called no refusal weekends. Pretty much every Friday, Saturday, they have a team of prosecutors up at the Montgomery County Jail who their sole purpose is to write blood warrants, and they'll bring a nurse up to the jail and they do the blood draw right there at the jail. And so if it's a Friday or Saturday night, the likelihood of a refusal case not ending up with a test is pretty low in Montgomery County. In Harris County, they have that option all the time. Every day of the week they have the ability to get a blood warrant, but sometimes it still doesn't happen. So the second thing that would happen if you refuse a breath or a blood test is that the Department of Public Safety, the people who control your driver's license, they're going to suspend your license. And there is an opportunity, however, to save that, but you only have 15 days from the day of the refusal for your lawyer to request a hearing to save your license. So it's very critical. If you've been charged with a DWI and you refused, you really need to get a lawyer quickly. The other instance where you need to get a lawyer quickly is pretty much every other legal case. If you're charged with a crime, you need a lawyer on your side immediately. So the final consequence really that comes with a refusal that this one people really don't know about is that in Montgomery County, you are likely going to be ineligible for a pretrial diversion. Now, pretrial diversion is a program, it's kind of like probation, but in Montgomery County, you actually have to serve jail time. You have to serve a few days in jail. But at the end of that probation and the completion of the couple days, 3 days in jail, the case is dismissed. And it's dismissed like it never happened. It's something you can get expunged, and it's different from a non-disclosure and expunction. You can get totally erased. So pretrial diversion is really good for people like doctors and people who want to go to med school, or they have some type of license where they just cannot take a plea of any kind to a DWI. A pretrial diversion can be a way out. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to subpoena the officer. And we're going to subpoena that officer so that we can challenge the stop. The way we challenge the stop is we ask the officer questions, we go over any evidence we've been provided, like an offense report, and try to prove that they did not have reasonable suspicion or probable cause to pull your vehicle over in the first place. Perhaps they said that you were weaving within your lane instead of weaving outside of your lane. You know, that might be a reason to get the probable cause struck by the judge. The other thing we're going to do is lock down the testimony of the officer. A DPS officer or a Conroe police, Houston police officer is not going to be prepared for this hearing the same way they would be if we were having a full jury trial. In a jury trial, in Montgomery County, at least, I know that the prosecutors are going to meet with the officer. They're going to have a meeting in their office. They're going to discuss the strategy of the case. In Harris County, there are so many cases down there, they may not be able to have that meeting, but they're going to try to have a meeting just before. In an ALR case, they may not have a meeting at all. In fact, the officer might not show up to the hearing, and then your license might be saved just because of that. But again, you've got to get it within the 15 days. You've got to hire that lawyer quickly so that we can get started on your case. Well, it's very similar to the way we beat the driver's license suspension. First thing we're going to do is challenge the probable cause for the stop. The second thing we're going to do is challenge the standardized field sobriety tests and the way that they were administered by the officer. There's a number of ways to do this. The officer may have done what's called the horizontal gaze nystagmus. That's the eye test. He may have done that incorrectly. He may have used an improper stimulus. He may have had you facing traffic and inadvertently created optokinetic nystagmus. A lot of different ways to attack that. The final thing that we would do, though, in attacking a breath or blood case is it really happens in jury selection. The main resource that a prosecutor uses to convict someone of DWI where there is no test, there's no breath, there's no blood, the main thing they use is the fact that the client refused. They try to get the jury to say, look, this guy, he knew what his blood alcohol was going to be. That's why he didn't give us the test. But there are other reasons why somebody may refuse. For example, they may be really afraid of needles. Perhaps the officer didn't give you the option to take a breath test. Maybe he only said he wanted blood and you're deathly afraid of needles. The jury is going to understand that. A lot of the people on the jury are afraid of needles. Nobody wants to do that. The other reason is maybe you don't want to get a blood test down at the jail. You might be afraid of needles anyway, and they say, okay, well, let's say you're at a doctor's office. You go to the doctor and he says, we need a blood test because you have a heart condition. We need to figure things out. Well, okay, if you're at a sanitary place like a doctor's office, maybe you're going to consent to that. But when they haul you down to the Montgomery County Jail and you step over, a few other inmates on your way to the chamber where they're going to take your blood, maybe it's a little bit different in your mind. A DWI first in Texas is a Class B misdemeanor. That means that the maximum punishment is 180 days in jail and up to a $2,000 fine. But there's also the opportunity for probation, and more recently, in the last few years, there's opportunity for what's called a deferred adjudication probation, where your lawyer can argue with the prosecutor to get an offer of deferred. That means if you complete the probation, you can apply for a non-disclosure. It's not as good as pretrial diversion, but it's not as bad as a conviction either. Here's the dirty little secret. Police officers have a lot to do on their shift, and it takes a very long time to process somebody through a DWI with a blood warrant, probably longer than any other basic misdemeanor crime. It could take 3 or 4, maybe even 6 hours to go from the point that the client has refused a breath or blood test after being read the DIC-24 to the time where they actually finish the paperwork and bring that person to the jail. If the officer is nearing the end of his shift and he is not excited about the prospect of finishing off this DWI, he may say, this is just going to be a refusal case. We're not going to go get the blood warrant. It's 5 in the morning on a Tuesday. We don't want to wake up the judge and have the judge review that warrant because they're going to have to wake up a judge in the middle of the night if that's the time that you're arrested. So the dirty little secret is, sometimes the folks who are in charge of getting the evidence just get a little tired and need to get home to their families, and your case may benefit from that. So thanks for tuning in. I hope you tune in next week where we'll be going over another dirty little secret.